Hello, my fellow geometry teachers. I have some assignments or an assignment for you to do prior to our first meeting. And this was something that the Algebra 1 group spent almost a week going through and deciding which of the standards are priority standards and which ones are supporting standards. And then we actually added another column to that, what we called a non-negotiable standard. And as we were working on it, we defined what each of those were, and you can see that up here to the top left. And I'm actually going to start with priority and supporting standard. So a priority standard is something that we felt was a major work of the course, a big idea or thread throughout the course. If you look at over the course of the entire year, your priority standards when encompass 70% of your time is spent on that. You would use MTSS Tier 1 and 2 interventions for students that had not yet mastered a priority standard. A supporting standard, that falls into the other 30% of your time category. It builds upon the other standards, hence the reason supporting, and it supports their understanding. And we would use MTSS Tier 1 interventions for your supporting standards. And then we came up with what was considered non-negotiables. In other words, all students need a check mark next to a non-negotiable in order to have considered passed Algebra 1. So not only are we using MTSS tiers 1 and 2, but we're going to use tier 3, which means your special education teachers, your ELL teachers, those particular students are getting that intervention within those classrooms as well. One of the things we talked about, in terms of those special education teachers or ELL teachers is we as regular education teachers would be providing them information and material for them to be able to help address those standards that students are not quite achieving in the regular classroom or through Tier 1 and 2 MTSS support. So in order for us to figure out where we want to put particular standards in the class, trimester 1, 2, and 3, because we need to come up with a syllabus for trimester 1, some common formative assessments, and some mini lessons for particular standards. That's what we are tasked to do for trimester 1 in these 4 hours. And so in order to do that, I truly feel we need to have an agreement as for what are our priority standards and what are our supporting standards. And I think we need to look at this from a regular geometry perspective. And I think honors geometry needs to have a separate conversation. I guess ideally the standards would be the same, which ones are priority and which ones we're supporting. It is the amount of detail and depth that you go into within those standards that makes them an honors geometry standard. So what I would like each of you to do, I've shared this document with you in this email. I would like you to make a copy, change the name, put your name, Geometry Standards, Julie, or whatever. And based on what you're reading there, mark what you feel it should fit under, priority or supporting standard. And if you're not exactly sure what the standard is saying, I'm going to include a website called Achieve the Core, and you can go and find that standard in there, and they give examples of problems that would fall under that category. So we had to do that a couple times within Algebra 1. And something to note, and I'll actually put a column in here now that I'm thinking about it. Insert a column. This is just going to be our notes column. So we found that within some of the, I'm just going to look at this one right here. Within some of the standards, there could be A, B, C, D, E, F parts. And we felt that maybe part A would be a priority, but part B would be a supporting. So you could have both of these check marked and then just maybe put a note in there why you check mark both. And neither box may be marked on some of these, especially for Algebra 1, we felt that a particular standard wasn't addressed until after Algebra 1, maybe in geometry. And so as you're going through these, it doesn't necessarily have to have a check mark in one or the other. Could be both, it could be not at all. So I would say if you have a check mark in both or not at all, you maybe included a note as to why you thought that. So what I would like you to do is if you could do that maybe as soon as possible, spend some time on that. No rush to have to get it done today or the next couple days, but maybe by weekend's end, and send it to me. And I'm going to look through and figure out where we all thought things were, maybe things that were a complete consensus. We don't need to spend time discussing. But for our first meeting next week, my goal by the end of the meeting is that we agree on each of these if they are a priority or a supporting. So if you could have that done ahead of time, your version, and then we'll compile the thoughts and we'll look at the ones where we disagreed on and speak and share. That will be the driving conversation for our first meeting. And then the second and third meeting, then we'll figure out, where we want things to fall in, at least what do we want to be sure to include in trimester 1, and putting together some mini lessons and combative formative assessments. So if you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email. I kind of jabbered and rattled there, but if you could by weekend's end, check mark for each of these within the document, whether you feel it to be a priority or supporting. And again, if you need a reminder of the definition of what we felt as the Algebra 1 group to be a definition of a priority and a supporting, it's up top. Then we'll come back at another time and maybe do the non-negotiables. But for right now, let's focus on priority and supporting, and that can help drive us to what we want to make sure we include in trimester 1. Thanks.